Welcome back, everybody. Hope you had a good week. Got your coffee ready. I hope this is a coffee-worthy video. Today we're going to talk about electric transfer pumps. The particular one you're going to be seeing looks like a long tube. That's the newest style that's on the ISX, the L9. The ISL, it's on a very few B67s. Most of the B67s have a mechanical gear pump bolted on the back of the injection pump, and that gear pump is not replaceable on almost all the B67 pumps. But back to this pump, which you'll see in a little bit. This pump is bolted on those two engine models. It can run continuously. It is pulse width driven, not a straight voltage. There's no fuse in the circuit. The ECM can shut the transistor off if it has to. It's a 2-pin setup. One pin is the pulse or signal, and the other is the return. And the ECM runs the pump at a steady pulse width. I can't tell you what the duty cycle is. I can tell you if the lift pump has the lift pump has a short harness about 6 inches long. The harness is going to have a sheath over the wires that's about 5 inches long. The sheath is either black or yellow or red. So if it's black or red, the lift pump's going to pump 15, it should pump 15 psi. If the sheath is yellow, it should pump 35 psi. If it pumps below 30 psi and there's no air in the fuel, then the lift pump is failing. They raise that pressure from 15 to 35 to help prime fuel filters. You should be putting the fuel filter on this engine dry and then using the lift pump to prime it. If you screw the filter on tight on an ISX or an ISL, the one on the engine, if you screw it on tight, dry, Cummins says it takes 6 key cycles for the filter to be primed to the place where you start the engine. It's going to keep on running and not get a big chunk of air in the fuel. What we do is we screw the fuel filter up and then we back it a half a turn up by hand and back it off a half a turn so it's loose. And then we start doing key cycles. And by a key cycle, I mean you key on and that lift pump will run about a minute or give or take a few seconds, a minute. Then you got to shut the key off for about a minute and a half for the ECM to go to sleep, or it's going to know that it ran the lift pump. If you try to go off and on, it's not going to run it. So you'll shut it off, let it go to sleep, and then you turn the key back on and it'll run again. If the filter's loose, it's very easy to get the air out of it because it comes out between the gasket and the filter head, and that filter will fill up and start to run over at somewhere in the second or third key cycle of the pump running. And then we shut the key off and we crank the filter up, wipe it off, and then tighten the filter to spec. If you don't tighten it to spec, it's going to blow the gasket out. When it's running, you're going to have fuel everywhere. So tightening it to spec, that's another video. So once you got the filter tight, we do one more key cycle to make sure there's no air in there. Then we start the engine and we have zero. If the lift pump's working properly, we have zero problems doing that. Of course, the fuel that runs over the filter, we catch in a bucket or a pan. It is not, we don't let it run on the ground. So the lift pumps are mounted in rubber grommets. I should say transfer pumps, not lift pumps. The transfer pumps are mounted in rubber grommets so they kind of float, and then there's a couple straps over them, almost like drive shaft straps over drive shaft caps. And then the harness just plugs in, and that's it. There's always a check valve in the line. The ISL or L9s and the X have steel lines that you'll see coming off of these pumps, and there'll be one fitting that's bigger than the other that goes to that. and that's got a check valve in it. And that's so once the engine starts, it can pull fuel past that pump and not through that pump. Okay, so let's take a look at the pump on the engine. So here the pump is. You can see it's rubber mounted. Everything's painted red, but those two straps with the, I think they're 10 millimeter sockets, the socket that everybody always loses, the 10 millimeter. Those are just like drive shaft straps. They bolt that pump into a saddle. The pump itself floats in 2 rubber grommets. I think it's a good idea to buy the grommets and replace them. They don't come with the pump. On the mid-range engine, this pump bolts behind the ECM cooling plate. So if you look at the engine, you're like, where is the pump? I can't find it. You got to take the ECM cooling plate off, and the ECM off, the cooling plate off, and the pump is behind that. The pump is either 12 volts or 24 volts. There's a sticker on the pump that tells you what it is. Make sure you buy the right voltage pump for your engine. Again, it is not a straight DC pump. The ECM pulse width drives the pump. The harness on the pump has a loom over the wires. It's a short harness, about 6 or 8 inches long. If the loom is yellow, the pump makes 35 psi. If the loom is red or black, it only makes 15 psi. They went to the high pressure pump for better filter priming and less problems with priming. The purple arrow shows you where the fuel comes out of the housing and out of the pump eventually and goes towards the gear pump. This is a pretty good pump. It has a long life, but they can get damaged inside and then don't want to pump. So always check the pressure at the filter head. In a moment, you're going to see a bunch of arrows show up. You can back the video up and stop it. These arrows represent the fuel flow when the electric pump is running and the gear pump's not. That short yellow line that you see represents the check valve inside of that housing. If you need to replace that check valve, you take that big nut off where the green arrow is pointing, and inside it looks like a stainless steel shotgun shell. There's a big Allen keyhole in it. You just put an Allen wrench in there, break it loose, screw it out, screw the new one in. The system has to have that check valve or it'll drain fuel back all day long. The check valves are high quality, so the only time there's a problem with them is usually if something foreign gets stuck in one and it can't quite close. The lift pumps, the transfer pumps again are 12 or 24 volt. You have to buy the correct pump. Remember, if it's got the yellow sheath, it's the 35 psi. If it's got the black sheath, which is the older style pump, it's going to only prime to 15 psi. Thanks for joining me on Engine Shop Joe. See you next time. Make sure you subscribe.